Okay, now that we have everything up to the start of UVHM covered, it's time to start the journey towards the endgame. UVHM is where you will spend most of your playtime if you want to reach OB10, but there are some things you should know about UVHM before we get started. First, the enemies. The enemies you'll encounter will have 4 times the health they had in normal mode. 2 times increase over TVHM. Slag will be a lot more relevant. I mentioned it in a TVHM video already, but here's where it's really taking effect. Slagged enemies will now take 3 times the damage instead of the 2 times in TVHM. Adding to their health, all non-boss enemies will get a flat rate of health regen over time, which will get more ridiculous the farther you make it into UVHM. Then, lastly, every Vault Hunter gets a flat bonus to their swap speed when in UVHM. It's around 60% and applies to every Vault Hunter. Also, UVHM always scales to you, meaning that all missions and enemies will be around your level at all times. Now, onto the actual guide. We ended the last video on TVHM with some farming to prep for UVHM, but we are not quite done yet. There are 2 farms I do in UVHM before resetting the playthrough and actually starting to do content. I should mention this as well, you can reset the progress of your UVHM playthrough at any time. If you want to play through the story or certain DLCs again, it will reset all your progress though, so every mission you completed will be reset. First thing we want to do is head into the Snowman Headhunter and farm the train chest for an E-Tech launcher. We will farm this chest on read only so that we don't get XP from killing the snowman over and over again. Those launchers, especially the Topnia, are really good options for second wind. They have an edge on regular bandit launchers because they have such a splash radius that little enemies behind walls or cover, and they do very good damage of course. Since this is the start of UVHM, I'm not too picky on what I take here. Generally, I either go for a PBFG or a Topnia with either fire or shock. It can take quite a bit to get one of those, but thankfully there is a faster and more convenient farm for those that we will unlock later on. Once we have that, we'll head into the Scarlett DLC to get to the Grendel side quest again. Just as we did at the end of TVHM, we'll jump on top of Scarlet boat to give the pirates an unfair fight. I just do this DLC until I unlock the Grendel quest because the class mod is all that I'm after. Because here we want to upgrade our Blur Trickster. Our old one is level 25 and needs replacing. So here we're looking for one with +6 in chain reaction and +5 in kinetic reflection. You really want kinetic reflection here because at 10 out of 5 it'll give you 100% damage reduction when it's active, meaning regular shots won't do any damage to you. It's a lot more useful than the points in life tab. Now this entire time I was spec'ing the fleet because it makes the farming a lot faster, but since we're starting with the actual UVHM content now, I respec to inertia to give me an advantage in combat. After that, I reset the playthrough because I want to have these farms open again for later on. Right off the bat, we want to jump into some DLCs to either get some key items or just to beat them early to unlock farms. First, I clear Liarsburg though, just to have the fast travel station unlocked. Then, it's off to the Tina DLC. We travel to the unassuming docks and find ourselves in a role-playing game. Now the item we're looking for isn't hidden too far into DLC, but there are still some tricky fights ahead of us if you don't know what you're doing. Usually the dragons and attack here will put you into fight for your life instantly, but you can hide behind this boat to not get hit. It doesn't matter since you don't actually bleed out from that attack, but it's just nice to avoid it altogether. Killing the skeleton really isn't an issue, and we make our way to Flame Rock. Once there, we talk to the NPCs and progress the quest along. When you get to the part of beating the Bob Patron, you can stand in a doorway to block him so he can't run away from you, just so you don't have to chase him around. Then you can just talk to Torque and grenade jump over the fence to head into the forest quicker. Here we follow the Queen's trail to Davalon. I don't bother fighting anything and just run through everything. To get to the trees where the blood fruit, we can just jump over the fence here to get to the area quicker and avoid having to run through the orc camp. Fighting the trees can be a bit tricky, but there are some tricks to avoid them being a pain. Mainly the use of Teslas. Teslas can be used to block a lot of projectiles the game throws at you, and the orbs the trees release once they're dead are no exception.
Blood fruit grew on the tree, Well, they did. Think you're cool enough to grab the fruit without killing the tree first?
After we get those, we get back to Davalon and enter into the next area. I take this alternative path here to get to Davalon to avoid the enemies.
Nah, we told you what
Then we gotta meet the White Knight. I go through this graveyard, take out the big bone man, and lure some of the smaller ones into the next area. We'll be fighting some dragons here, and they can be a bit annoying to deal with. I lure the enemies here for two reasons. First is that they make good for second wins if you go down. The second reason being that they'll distract the dragons long enough so you can run back to the overpass to get some cover. From here we'll use the Lady Fist and Beat to kill all the dragons. I save quit after that just to teleport Roland to Davlin. We take the same path as before to meet up with them again. Then it's time for the Four Kings. During this fight, you'll have to keep an eye on your minimap to not get overwhelmed and run over by all the skeletons spawning. Easiest here is to use a Lady Fist to kill the kings, then phase lock the floating head and whittle it down with your herald. You want to use a non-elemental Lady Fist because the kings heavily resist all elements. You do that for all the kings and this fight should go over decently well. In the mines, you'll see this orb thingy. You can pay Iridium to get different temporary buffs from them. Here specifically, we are looking for the yellow buff, because this one gives you a speed bonus for a short time. We'll save quit until we see the yellow one, activate it, and run through the orc camp, avoiding all the enemies. Then we take Brick's advice and run away again.
Ouch! Sorry.
We talk to the totally real wizard and go through the gate. Now we have unlocked the side quest we were looking for. It's the Beard Makes the Man quest that we want. And if you accept this quest, you'll get the Grog nozzle. You can think of this gun as a ruby on steroids. Instead of the 12% lifesteal you get from the ruby, you get 65% from the Grog. Now whether you like it or not, most of the late game of this game is not well balanced and you kinda really want to use this gun to comfortably play at higher levels. Now before we continue on, I want to talk about a mechanic that I've mentioned shortly in the normal mode video that I want to elaborate on further here. I'm talking about drop reloading, because not only is it used to reload your guns, but dropping them in a specific order can be used for other things as well. Let me explain. Borderlands 2 works in a way where the second gun you pick up is the one that you spawn in with. So if you drop all your guns, the second one you pick up will be the one you spawn in with. There's another thing about drop reloading though. Obviously every time you do it, you swap to a different gun. You can use that to always swap to a specific gun whenever you drop reload. For that you just drop reload until you hold the gun you want, and then every time after that, whenever you drop reload, it'll swap to the gun you want to. You can use that to instantly swap to your healing gun every time you do it. Or going back to the thing I said before about spawning in with a specific weapon. Instead of dropping all of your guns every time and picking them up, you can manipulate the order by just drop reloading. It works like this. If you have no quest item equipped, you hold the gun you want to spawn in with, and you drop reload 3 times. Easy as that. Now if you have a mission item equipped, it changes to having to drop reload twice. So starting from the gun, you drop reload twice and you're done. Generally it's just start by holding the gun you want, count the number of guns you have equipped that are not mission items, subtract 1 from that, and you'll have the number of times you need to drop reload. So no mission items means you have 4 guns equipped, minus the 0 mission items, minus 1 is 3. So you have to drop reload 3 times. Okay, now that tangent is over, we can continue with the content. We'll be jumping into the Fight for Sanctuary DLC now. This DLC is notorious for being difficult, and it really can be. The enemies have a lot of health and spawn with very dangerous guns, but it also has some of the most overpowered farms in the game, so I want to get it out of the way early. So we start off by changing our gear a bit. Equip the Fire Lady Fist, Sheriff's Badge, the Bee, and a Tesla. Since we have the Grog now, we'll be using a Tesla for the majority of time going forward. Starting the DLC, we'll be thrown into an assault on Sanctuary. The game tells you to repel the assault, but you really don't have to. You can just sit around and wait for a couple minutes and it'll autocomplete. After that's done, we cleared the mysterious stranger's camp. We can take out all the pods with the Lady Fist. After meeting Vaughn, setting up the firewall and talking to the gang, we make our way to get the samples for tennis. For the rest of this DLC, we'll be using the Shock Pimpernel and the Bee. The key to this DLC is to take it slow and pick off the enemies from a distance. After getting the second brain, I save quit to get to the area transition faster, kill the enemy there, and continue with the mission. We repair the turrets, fight off the waves of enemies, hop into a car after, and head to the place where Mordecai is gonna be.
Hey, it's Vaughn. Vaughn, hello. Keep me posted, Mordecai. The Vault Hunter will meet you there.
We meet Talon, kill the enemies there, and save quit. I recommend following Talon's clues from the safety of a car, as to not get run over by the cars that spawn. Once we have those, we're told to clear out the camp and find Mordecai. We open the gate, kill the enemies right there, and now we have two options. We can either go through the camp the normal way, or we jump up this ledge, jump up on this cactus thingy, and jump up the cliff to get to Mordecai faster. If you do it the second way, you can get a bit overwhelmed by the enemies after the cutscene, but you should have just enough time to face lock an enemy and have them staggered because of Converge. After saving Mordecai, we go to the giant door, pull the lever, and save quit once we get the checkmark. You can of course fight all the enemies, but just don't bother. Then it's off to meet Brick. We head into the burrows, run through the first part, and then fight all the enemies with Brick. Nothing really to add here. Once in Helios Fallen, we can jump up the fences here to avoid the enemies in the first area. For the elevator room, I like to stay back and pick them off with my Pimpernel. We take the elevator up, deal with the loaders in the next room, and after that, I stand in front of the door where the enemies will spawn. I throw a Tesla at that crate, cause those actually heal you for some reason, and then kill the enemies. We go on further till we meet Tina, get the first two sets of components, and make our way to the bay. Here we'll have to fight a clone of Saturn basically. With Maya you can try and chain react the bot to insta-kill it, or you can just run up to this place, stand at the back of this wall, and Uranus will not turn to attack you. We go back, let Tina press the button, blow open the door, and go back to the camp. Now for this next part, you actually want to ignore all of the enemies in the first two areas. Ignoring them blocks other enemies from spawning, meaning that we can just run through the rest of this map without having to fight anyone. Fight against Cassius himself is also easy with Maya, since we can just phase lock him. Now back in Sanctuary, I ignore the enemies in the first two areas again, focus on the tendrils to get the door open, and run it through the rest of the enemies. Now, up top I run through the enemies again, but I'd recommend that you kill them here. It makes the bit after killing Hector a bit easier. I was just too lazy to do it here.
Now where was I?
Keep their tentacles to themselves. Unless they're willing to pay for it.
Hector is notorious for being a difficult fight. You can either approach him head on with a herald and whittle his health away slowly that way, or you can get rid of the two tendrils here, grenade jump up and use a fire lady fist with a bee to hit his head that way. The flowy thing is you can just hit by using the splash damage of your launcher, so you don't even have to leave your hiding spot. After Hector's dead, we get the Iridium, give it to Lilith, and we're done with the story of this DLC. Now we get to unlocking the farms. We take the Vanguard quest from Vaughn, Space Cowboy quest from Moxie, and the quest from Hammerlock.
Rest in peace, science, bro. The area that we're the best by, slaying enemy bandit leaders.
The Vanguard will do now, the other two we'll save for later. We take the flags and make our way to the first bandit chief. You can use a grenade jump to immediately get to him or go around the normal way. Now we repeat the same thing with the second one. Grenade jump up to his spot, kill him, and skedaddle. Then we watch the bandits jump to the death and get the next quest from Vaughn.
Wow, well, I am proud to...
Here he will ask us to kill some sandworm queens for him. He'll want to turn on read-only before killing the first queen so you can farm her for the toothpick and the retainer. We'll need both of those later on. Now if you only get one of the two from the first queen, you can turn off read-only, pick up the item, turn read-only on again, and go farm the second queen. You want to farm the queens here because while the regular worms can still drop the items, they have a much lower chance to do so. After we get those two items, we hop into the Scarlett DLC again. The objective is to unlock the Grendel mission for the class mod farm and the Pimpernel farm for later on. We'll be grabbing both of those once we reach level 80. If you also want to get a Sandhog later for the peak, you should stop before giving Herbert the tapes. If you don't care about the Sandhog, you can push all the way until you unlock the Pimpernel quest. We do this now because it's easier to get through now as compared to later at level 80, since most of our gear will be very under-leveled at that point. It would make going through this DLC a lot more difficult.
Take that gift box over there. Grenade out!
Once we have those unlocked, I'd recommend beating the main quest of the base game. It's not required for starting the peak, but I usually like to do it because it opens up a lot of farms, and if you're new to UVHM, it can be nice practice to get used to UVHM. Since I talked about the story in the previous two videos, I won't be going over it again here in detail. I'll only really mention the most important bits. Everything is pretty similar to how it is in TVHM, so you can just use the gear you have to progress the story until you get to the bunker mission. Once you're there, I get a new Herald, since the one you have will be a bit underleveled by now. Then I get a new launcher. This is where the toothpick and retainer come in handy. Because we took the mission from Hammerlock in the Fight for Sanctuary DLC, we can go to the Writhing Deep. This is usually where you would fight Hadorax, but there's also a chest hidden here, which will always have launchers in it. You can farm this to get easy top nears. Whenever you have the toothpick and retainer equipped, you will run faster and jump higher, but only in this map. You can use that to reach the chest with the launchers. Here you can just farm for as many top nears as you want. After that, we can continue on with the story. The only real major concern going forward is to not crash your game when killing the bunker. Other than that, you shouldn't have any real issues. Once I get to the Boneyard, I either get the This Just In mission to get a new B-Shield, or I go back to the forest in the Tina DLC and farm the trees there for an upgrade. Once you have beaten the story or decided to skip it, we get to the most fun part of the game, the massive level grind to level 80. There are of course many different ways you can get to level 80. You can farm bosses, do side missions, reset the playthrough and play it all again. It's really up to you. What I recommend, however, if you're on PC that is that you farm Badmore. You can get yourself the XP relic from the Good, the Bad and the Mordecai quest to make it a bit faster. Then, using the Fire Pimpernel and a B-Shield, you can spawn in at the Bloodshot door and kill Badmore over and over again. While doing that, I'll just upgrade my B every 5 or so levels. If you're on console, you can go fight Uranus or Saturn or just suffer through Badmore with the longer load times. In any case, once you have reached level 80, it's time to farm quite a few items for the peak. First, I get myself a level 80 B shield. We'll be using that for the peak, so make sure to get a decent one. Then we get a herald. We'll use that for some general mobbing while we farm. After that, I go and grab a corrosive Topnia. This will be our main second wind launcher during the entire peak. Then we go to Scarlett DLC to finish the farms that we had opened up earlier. We get a level 80 version of the trickster we have now, again with 6 in chain reaction and 5 in kinetic reflection. After that we get ourselves a corrosive matching grip pimpernel. I used this gun for the entire peak basically, so I'd recommend getting at least a decent prefix on it. Maybe don't get that bladed one, you know. Then after that you can get a flying corrosive sandhawk. I usually don't end up actually using it, but it's just nice to have it on hand. Now we only have a few items left on the shopping list. First is a corrosive bone of the ancients. I don't think I have to explain how damage and cooldown rate is beneficial to us. Then we go to Tina DLC and farm this chest in the unassuming docks for a chaotic neutral cleric. For this class mod, neither the rarity nor the skills matter, we only want the passive boosts it gives. Max size and fire rate bonuses are really good for single target bosses. If you haven't already, you can go to the warrior normal mode to farm iridium to max out at least the following STUs: grenade, sniper, pistol and rocket launcher. I still recommend having at least some upgrades to those if you don't want to max them out.
Don't tell nobody where you got that. I made sure of that.
The last thing I get is from the Snowman Headhunter. I read-only farm the chest to get a legendary Siren class mod. This class mod has a massive cooldown bonus, which, when paired with the bone we have, is gonna be very useful in some fights during the peak. And this about sums it up for UVHM before starting the peak. There will be one more video in this series where I go over the journey through the peak, and if you guys want I can make a separate video going over beating all the main content at OP10. In any case, let me know what you thought in the comments and feel free to like and subscribe. I also stream over on Twitch if you want to watch more Borderlands content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all around.